The very concept of a super soldier will always trouble people. It's that warped aspiration that led to Nazis, to Ultron, to the Avengers.
Welcome back to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy. In the world of the MCU, the Avengers have ultimate power. They're stronger than any individual, establishment, or government. Their choices can change the world, affect every living being on the planet, and at times, the whole universe. And with such absolute power, what becomes of us, the normal people? What's the value of governments and laws in the face of gods?
Perhaps they're all remembering that old saying, power corrupts.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Most people are fine with the Avengers holding absolute power because they're the heroes. They save the world, they can fight the battles that we never could. We need them, so it's easy to turn a blind eye to some of the disadvantages that arise from this arrangement. But there is one man who feels completely different and is willing to oppose this power structure, and that's Zemo, arguably the most important villain in the MCU.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Not only the man who brought the Avengers down from the inside, but the man who reminds us that the Avengers can fail, that they have too much power, and at some point, someone must ask the question, who protects the world from the people who protect the world?
The danger with America's super soldiers is that we put them on pedestals. They become symbols, icons, and then we start to forget about their flaws. From there, cities fly, innocent people die, movements are formed, wars are fought.
So Zemo's strict code creates a fascinating opposition to the Avengers. He's leading a crusade against superhumans with the ideal that superheroes are inherently superior. And so naturally, he targets the Avengers. But at his core, Zemo isn't evil. He doesn't seek power, nor does he want to rule or destroy the world. In Captain America's Civil War, Zemo was motivated by vengeance.
I'm here because I made a promise.
You lost someone.
I lost everyone.
His family perished in Sokovia while the Avengers were busy fighting Ultron. So while these gods were battling, buildings and cities were raining down on the powerless mortals. Yes, the Avengers did save the world when they stopped Ultron, and they did try to rescue and protect as many people as they could during the chaos. But all of this madness was created by the Avengers themselves. Ultron was their creation, their mistake. Tony Stark played God, and Zemo's family paid the price.
So you're going for artificial intelligence and you don't want to tell the team?
I don't want to hear the man was not meant to meddle medley.
His negligent arrogance almost destroyed the world, and all of the Avengers are complicit. Zemo believes they must be held accountable for their sins. While the Sokovia Accords were meant to be the consequences for the Avengers' mistakes, Zemo actually represents their biggest failure.
When the dust cleared and the screaming stopped, it took me 2 days until I found their bodies. And the Avengers, they went home.
The Avengers save the world and then go home, leaving the survivors to pick up the pieces. Then they hold parties celebrating their great victories, while people like Zemo are left with only ashes. Yes, there's more to it than that, and I'm not trying to paint the Avengers like they're the Seven or something, but these optics are disturbing. From a certain point of view, it's not too hard to compare the Avengers to the ridiculously rich and powerful in real life. People who become out of touch with the hardships of regular people because they exist on a different playing field with all their money and influence.
Those people, Pete, those people up there, the rich and the powerful, they do whatever they want. Guys like us, they don't care about us.
Zemo believes that any individual who seeks or has godly power is bound to become a supremacist.
The desire to become a superhuman cannot be separated from supremacist ideals.
While today we associate supremacism with racism, the term refers to any individual or group who see themselves as superior to others. Now, the Avengers are heroes who saved half the universe, but their very existence raises some troubling dilemmas.
Our very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. And conflict breeds catastrophe.
Just because their actions result in a safer world, should the Avengers be allowed to operate without any supervision, without limitation, and without following the basic rule of law? That was the question that Civil War tried to answer. As the collateral damage piled up, the Avengers faced the consequences of their actions in the form of the Sokovia Accords.
For the past 4 years, you've operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's an arrangement the governments of the world can no longer tolerate.
But some heroes disagreed with the UN's decision. So this is essentially what Steve Rogers' side believes. The Avengers should be independent, unrestrained by bureaucracy. Answering to the UN means the Avengers would just become another militarized organization that follows orders from their superiors, which goes against the essence of what it means to be a vigilante and a superhero.
What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
Cap understood that governments have their own agendas, and the nations of the world never really agree on anything, so it's easier for superheroes to bypass all the red tape. It's the only way they can protect the world more efficiently. There are times when superheroes have no choice but to ignore laws to get things done. Now there is merit to Steve's argument, and after all, he is Captain America. He won't abuse his authority even if he goes against the government's laws. But there is some out-of-touch arrogance and hypocrisy here, even if it's unintentional. See, once powerful people start to choose which laws they want to obey, then they're declaring that they are the ultimate authority. This is dangerous thinking. The Avengers' influence reaches every corner of the world, and this creates global concerns. How many tyrants throughout history use the same logic to justify their atrocious crimes?
Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand.
This is exactly the type of superiority that Zemo warned about. The idea that the Avengers think that they know better than any government in the world, and therefore they need to operate without restrictions. This allows them to create exceptions that will always justify their actions, even if those actions don't always end up being what's best for the world. A pivotal scene that proves this is the confrontation between John Walker and the Dora Milaje.
The Dora Milaje don't have jurisdiction here.
The Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever the Dora Milaje find themselves to be.
Yes, this line proves what a badass AO is. But think about the legality of the matter, because none of them have any jurisdiction in Latvia, except for Walker and Lamar, who represent the GRC and can operate on foreign soil. Sam and Bucky are operating without any supervision, they never signed the Sokovia Accords, and they're harboring a fugitive who they helped escape from prison. And I'm pretty sure the Dora Milaje have no real legal jurisdiction outside of Wakanda. But because Wakanda is so powerful, who's going to try to stop them? The Dora Milaje aren't there to save the world from some great danger. No, they just want to arrest Zemo because he killed T'Chaka, and they are willing to fight and kill anyone who stands in their way. It's a disturbing idea that superheroes and elite warriors can ignore international laws with such ease just because they feel like it.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
The irony here is that despite the attempt to enforce superheroes, no one really follows the Sokovia Accords anymore, not even the heroes who supported them in the first place. The Accords were tossed to the side as soon as a far bigger danger threatened the whole universe. In the end, it's the complex question of accountability.
If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
You see, the Avengers can still have their own agendas and priorities. The Avengers have multitudes of personalities, each with their own beliefs and moral codes. They're all humans, and humans make mistakes. Heck, Thor and Vision aren't even human, and they still make mistakes. But with so much power, superheroes' mistakes tend to become catastrophic. But now there are more and more heroes with godly powers who can't be enforced by normal people. How can any government enforce the laws on individuals like Wanda, Thor, Hulk, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, and all the others? What cell could hold them? What army could defeat them?
And I worry about how democracy survives when one man can move cities with his mind.
But the world tends to forgive and forget the Avengers' missteps. Did anyone put cuffs on Tony when he created Ultron? No. Tony's role in creating Ultron was shoved to the side. People let these things slide because the world needs the Avengers. And to make matters worse, the Avengers are idolized. So of course, the world's going to turn a blind eye to most of their missteps.
Because you need us. Yes, the world is a vulnerable place. And yes, we help make it that way. But we're also the ones best qualified to defend it.
In a perverse way, it's like they're holding the world hostage. So at what point does this arrangement turn into totalitarianism?
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet. You hear me? You hear me?
And then there's the events of WandaVision. Wanda is an Avenger, yet in her grief, she took over an entire town, changing reality and mind-controlling people. And that was all her. No one manipulated her into doing that.
This will be your only warning. Stay out of my home. You don't bother me, I won't bother you.
Get off my lawn.
Which by itself proves Zemo's worst fears about people becoming godly beings. How can any government or army enforce the rule of law on the Scarlet Witch? SWORD created White Vision in response, a deterrent that they believed could stop Wanda. And it turns out they were disobeying the laws by doing that. Normal human governments have no choice but to create their own super beings to balance the scales. That's just how the global power struggle works. That's how we get people like John Walker, who received ultimate power from the government when he became Captain America. Because when the Avengers become more powerful, escalation is inevitable. The government made Walker into Captain America because they wanted to bolster their own influence in a world filled with super beings. That's also why Karli Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers turned themselves into super soldiers. They were responding to the global escalation of superheroes. And once you get superhumans with malicious intents running around the world, Zemo's grim prophecy is bound to come true.
Do we want to live in a world full of people like the Red Skull?
Steve Rogers' ethics have defined him as the ultimate hero, but the power that comes with the shield carries serious responsibility that not everyone can handle.
Do you know who I am?
The Avengers are heroes, but their arrangement with the world can easily be abused by less moral individuals. And as Zemo said, people who seek ultimate power will eventually be corrupted by their supremacism.
The serum never corrupted Steve.
Touché. But there has never been another Steve Rogers, has there?
Which is exactly what happened to Walker, and it resulted in him killing a Flag Smasher in cold blood. He did this because he believed that his authority as Captain America allowed him to do it. And while he was put on trial, his punishment was a slap on the wrist at best.
Nobody in there is mad at you about that. I mean, you would have been doing him a favor if you'd taken out the whole lot.
And yet, the Avengers refuse to take on any positive role in global politics. They don't seek to be the ones that call the shots. Captain America has no desire to become president. Yet, they clearly see the current establishment as negligent and untrustworthy. Otherwise, they would have accepted their supervision.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
Sam tells this senator to do better, but he doesn't say how to do it. He offers no solution to the GRC's legislation. It's a powerful speech, but it's missing the core component that explains the words, do better. He presents the GRC and the system as the problem, and by doing so, he creates more resentment toward the government from the people who are already angry and desperate, while victimizing Karli and the terrorists.
You have to stop calling them terrorists.
Sorry, Sam, but they are terrorists. Saying that they're not sends a very dangerous message for the world. It wasn't Sam's intention, but there is the risk that extremists will take Sam's words out of context. Suddenly, Karli becomes a martyr, a revolutionary who fought the corrupt establishment to free the people.
They become symbols, icons, and then we start to forget about their flaws.
Of course, the GRC and the government should do better. There's no question about that. The system is broken, and at times it can be corrupt and self-serving. Political loopholes, bureaucracy, and lack of empathy created endless obstacles for the government to be better. So yes, Sam is absolutely right to tear these senators a new one, but the repercussions of the blip are entangled in so many challenges. There are so many moving parts on the global scale, it's the most monumental task any government has ever faced. So in this case, and I'm sorry to say this, but this senator is right.
But you have no idea how complicated this situation is.
You know what? You're right.
The question is, where are the Avengers in all of this? Why aren't they doing more to help the world post-blip? The Avengers don't trust the system, so why aren't they directly involved in helping the world rebuild after the blip?
If you believe in peace, then let us keep it.
I think you're confusing peace with quiet.
Isn't it their responsibility as Earth's mightiest heroes? They possess more power and influence than any other government in the world. Between all the cosmic powers, magic, and Wakanda's technology and all the rest of it, the Avengers probably could have found a way to solve world hunger, the arms race, you name it. Yet, they don't seem to bother with viable solutions. They shift the blame and responsibility to the very establishment that they are undermining.
Look, you people have just as much power as an insane god or a misguided teenager. The question you have to ask yourself is, how are you going to use it?
Right back at you.
Zemo, at least, has the courage to take matters into his own hands and stop threats before they can grow. Take, for example, the way Sam Wilson handled Karli Morgenthau. Sam's empathy prevented him from losing hope that Karli would see the error of her ways. He kept insisting that she's not beyond saving, even after she crossed the line and became a terrorist who blew people up. I mean, it makes sense. He's the hero, so he's doing his heroic responsibility.
She's just a kid. You're seeing something in her that isn't there. You're clouded by it.
But Zemo's perspective was the opposite. He knew that Karli was too far gone, with her extreme ideals and the super soldier serum corrupting her. Zemo doesn't deal with the what-ifs, he believes in absolutes.
If we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
Karli escalated, and her actions almost led to catastrophe. While Sam wasn't the one who killed her, she died in his arms when she was beyond redemption. But how many paid the price till things got to that point? A conclusion that Zemo predicted from the start.
She will not stop. She will escalate until you kill her or she kills you.
By the end of the conflict, the Flag Smashers were taken into custody. However, Zemo eliminated them before they got the chance to become a threat at a later point. If Carly's acolytes would have went to any prison, that would have opened the door for governments to experiment on them, which would ultimately create more gods among men. While Zemo's way is far from moral, you can't argue with its effectiveness. He killed Wilfred Nagel to make sure he would never create more super soldiers, and later he destroyed all the super serum vials. Well, most of them at least. This is also what Zemo did in Civil War, eliminating the super soldiers in Siberia before some other nefarious individual or organization got their hands on them. Sometimes, eliminating a threat sooner might be the only option to prevent something far worse.
No more half measures, Walter.
Now, Zemo's hands aren't clean either. He broke countless laws, committed terrible crimes, and murdered innocent people, all to achieve his goals, as if the ends justify the means. But his actions don't contradict his argument. Zemo isn't a supremacist. He isn't seeking ultimate power, and he seems to genuinely regret the atrocious things he had to do.
I'm sorry about your father. He seemed a good man. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. It was never personal. You were simply a means to a necessary end.
He's the other side of the coin from the Avengers. He's willing to do what they won't. Now, this sort of makes Zemo into a vigilante. And most superheroes are vigilantes, individuals who decide to take the law into their own hands after the establishment fails to achieve true justice. So, in a way, you can make a case that Zemo is the Batman to the Avengers. A man who decided to take the law into his own hands after the establishment, the Avengers in this case, failed to achieve justice due to their arrogance and negligence. And the Avengers' actions prove Zemo's argument time and time again. When they created time travel technology, they didn't consider asking the UN for approval. No, they went back in time on their own accord without fully understanding the risks and consequences. While things worked out pretty well, this once again proves the arrogance of the heroes. The opinions of governments and the scientific community didn't matter, since the Avengers know better and they don't have time for debating the morality of their actions. Not to mention that the Avengers' actions tend to create the catastrophes that they attempt to prevent. Tony Stark deciding to create Ultron without consulting anyone other than Bruce Banner, who, let's be honest, isn't the type of guy to say no.
That what we needed was a pseudo-armor around the world. Remember that? Whether it impacted our precious freedoms.
And after Ultron went rogue, Tony once again made a similar decision to create Vision, showing blatant disregard to the consequences of his actions.
I'm in a loop. I'm caught in a time loop. This is exactly where it all went wrong.
I know.
Which makes him a total hypocrite when it comes to the Sokovia Accords. And the Avengers might be a little out of touch with the little people, as was proven by Stark's way to handle the damage control in New York. There was no empathy for working men like Adrian Toombs and his crew, who lost their jobs because of his callous decision.
These guys have a family. I have a family. I'm all in on this. I could lose my house.
I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing I can do.
Granted, there is a case to be made that a regular salvage crew shouldn't handle dangerous alien tech. But when Toombs became the Vulture and started dealing in dangerous tech, Tony completely dismissed it as a threat worthy of the Avengers.
There are people who handle this sort of thing.
The Avengers?
No. Just a little below their pay grade.
Indicating that the Avengers are too superior to waste their time on small-time criminals like the Vulture. And the biggest example of Iron Man being out of touch is the creation of Edith, an AI who controls defense satellites capable of launching murder drones. And what did Tony do? He gave a teenager control over this weapon, proving that Tony did not learn his lesson with Ultron. Tony didn't even bother adding some failsafe that would have prevented Edith from falling into the wrong hands.
I'd like to transfer your control over to Quentin Beck.
Waiting for confirmation.
Confirm.
Why? Because of the arrogance and superiority that Zemo warned us about. Not to mention the countless questionable things the other Avengers have done over the years. The Hulk's rampage, Doctor Strange messing with time, Hawkeye's Ronin run. Then in No Way Home, Peter asked Doctor Strange to wipe people's memories without their consent. He wanted to roofie the whole planet.
You still think there will be no consequences, Strange? No price to pay. We broke our rules. The bill comes due. Always.
And so, Zemo is right about a lot, and his presence in the MCU will forever raise the same question that Watchmen asked about heroes. Who protects the world from the people who protect the world? Alright, so what do you think? Was Zemo right? Or was I brainwashed by Hydra without my knowledge? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.